Right then guys, welcome to Gone in 60 Seconds. It's time where we talk about the week's motorsport stories, and there's been so much because F1 is back. Yes, F1 races down under this weekend and it's the first of the new 2026 regulations, but also F2 is back, F3 is back. IndyCar was back last week and is again racing this week, so there is loads to get into. So let's get straight on with it, shall we? So first of all, this is the channel. Please do make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It's really important. It really helps me to continue to make videos. The other channel, which is the main channel, is all about cars. There is loads of new videos. We've had a bit of a Tesla week going on, where we've had conversations with the new Grok in cars, and talked about AI in cars. We've tested 2 new Teslas, including taking one on a road trip to Wales last weekend. So loads to come as well. We've got some good cars coming up. We've got KGM Torres. It looks like we're going to have a proper look at the Hyundai Ioniq 9, the 7-seater. And yeah, so there's quite a few cars coming up on the channel. So please do make sure you're subscribed to both. It really does help. Let's get straight into the motorsport news then. First of all, last week was the first IndyCar race of the season at St. Pete, won by Alex Palou. It's like it's never been away. Scott McLaughlin in P2 and Christian Lundgaard in P3 for McLaren, with Pato O'Ward finishing 5th. Kyle Kirkwood in 4th, Pato O'Ward 5th, Marcus Ericsson 6th, Lundgaard in 7th, Roman Grosjean in 8th, Rinus VeeKay in 9th, and Dennis Hauger in 10th. So a nice mix in that top 10 there. A very entertaining race, as it always is. They're racing again this weekend, and we'll talk about that at the end. On the subject of IndyCar, Colton Herta made his F2 debut today, as I'm recording this on Friday, and I watched it, and it was a little bit underwhelming, but I suppose it's going to take him a bit of time to get used to the different cars and the different way of racing. But he ended up in the barriers during practice, which is a real shame, which gave him less time. And then he ended up with less time to prepare and get ready for qualifying, because F2, it's just one practice session straight into qualifying. So it wasn't the greatest appearance at all, but the car looks good, and do you know what? He's not a million miles off. If we look at qualifying, you'll see he's not a million miles off at all. In other F2 news, Alex Dunn's finally been confirmed as an Alpine junior. So that's been long and protracted. It looks like he was going to Red Bull, which is why he abruptly left McLaren. But I think that was something where Marco may have outstepped, and then he left, and then it all ended up a bit up in the air. There are rumours, I'm saying there are only rumours, that Dunn had to get a payoff because he wasn't wanted in the Red Bull family, and they'd like pre-signed a pre-contract or something, so they had to kind of settle that. I don't know how true that is, but it could have contributed to the removal or quitting or leaving of Helmut Marko for making that decision. Who knows, but Alex Dunn, he looks like he has got a great opportunity, because he really did show last year, like he really had the speed, and he could potentially be a really special talent, but it remains to be seen how he gets on at Alpine and what opportunities he gets. So F2 have qualified. Bogdanovic took pole, with Stenshaw on second and Alex Dunn in third place. If we go down the list a little bit, Colton Herta 14th in the high tech, but Miata, his teammate, was 13th. And there isn't much between them, actually. So really, if you looked, even though Colton Herta lost all that time, there's not a massive difference. So that's quite positive for him, really. F3 have also qualified, and Niall in the Campos took pole with Ugo Chukwu, who used to be a McLaren junior but isn't anymore, and Freddie Slater in the Trident in third place. So F2 and F3 are racing this weekend, and I'll tell you about the timings for their races when we look at the M Sport Extra calendar at the end, and I'll tell you how you can watch them, of course. WEC news, so the Qatar season opener has been postponed. And this is, sport is not protected from these global situations, and their war has broken out in the Middle East, and it is a dangerous place to be. So you can't have teams and motorsport, you can't have all of those things taking place because it is just too dangerous, and you certainly can't have fans making their way there either. So the Qatar season opener has been postponed, which of course is a shame, but it will repair later in the season, I'm sure. Well, fingers crossed, this war isn't going on for too long, and we can get back to racing in the area. On that subject, FIA are looking at cancelling the Bahrain and Saudi Arabia races because, again, it's unsafe to be there. If they were to take place now, they would have to be cancelled. They are in April, and you're going to need a resolution in the next week, really, to make a decision if they're going to be able to race there. I highly suspect they're not going to be able to, and I can't see where those races could be penciled in later in the year because the F1 calendar is just so condensed. Unless you're going to throw them in the August break, but I can't see teams necessarily agreeing to that. But I suppose it depends how much money they stand to lose by F1 not racing. And I think that is a distinct possibility, that we go the whole of April without a race. Which, could be an absolute godsend for teams like Aston Martin that are really struggling and need extra time to catch up. So there are swings and roundabouts, but it means we get super excited. We get these first few flyaway races and then nothing. But the loss of 2 races on the calendar does mean that we have a slightly more condensed calendar. Still plenty of races. We had the situation in COVID where we had to cancel races, and then they had to find replacements due to having a set amount of races to be able to qualify for the TV money. We're nowhere near in that territory because there's plenty of races. Now, there have been rumours about going to Imola or going to Portimao, but you just can't do that with that short notice. There's a lot you need to do. You need to prep the tracks. You need to sell tickets. There is so much you need to do to put on a Grand Prix, and there just isn't the time to do that. I know F1 teams are kind of superhuman, but you just can't do it in that time. There are complications. A lot of the teams have their kit already in Bahrain because they were there for testing and they left that set of kit there. So the garages are already made up, everything is ready. So they're going to have to get that stuff out and send it down the line. They can't really just leave it there. So there's going to have to be some kind of logistical play to get all of the kit out of Bahrain. But that's another story. The most important thing is the safety of everybody involved, right? And of course, we all hope that we get peace sooner rather than later, and the whole thing can be condemned to the past, right? Next up, Honda. So Honda have made some strides. It's been an absolute nightmare for Honda and Aston Martin. We've had the bombshell press conference by Adrian Newey where he said it's all Honda's fault. The engine rattles so much that it's dangerous for the drivers, and Fernando can do 25 laps and Lance can only do 15. And then there was another one saying, we've only got 2 batteries left, 1 for each car, and it's only a matter of time before they rattle themselves to pieces. Wow, what a statement that is. It's horrible. What a horrible situation to be in. And of course, because they've not been able to run, they've certainly not run at full power, you can't test how good the actual car is either. So, that is a real problem for Aston Martin, Honda, and I think they're probably condemned to a year of real struggles because they're not going to have the time or the resources within the cost cap to fix all of that in a year. Obviously, you would hope that as reliability improves, as they test more, the more times they turn up to a track, the more things they learn, that they can get more reliable as the year goes on, and the more reliable they get, the more they can focus on trying to get more out of the package. But you have to think they've got to be looking at next year for proper big changes. What does that mean for Fernando Alonso? Can you see him staying for another year? Could you see him walking out midway through? Could you see him just saying thank you very much and leaving in the middle of the Australian Grand Prix and going and getting on a plane and getting out of there and never coming back? I could see all of that happening, to be honest. I can't see why he would want to pootle around for a few laps, embarrassing himself at the back. So I'm really worried about what this means for Aston Martin, Honda and Fernando Alonso. Next up, George Russell got a warning and a reprimand for 2 incidents in practice. He came out of the pit lane and just bumped into one of the, I was going to say Toro Rossos then, one of the RBs, I think. What a silly thing to do, and it was quite clearly his fault. So, yeah, a bit silly from George, completely unnecessary. It's only practice. There have been some new guidelines issued with disqualification now allowed for very extreme collisions. So just some rewording to the penalties in F1, and these things are normally refreshed just before the start of a Grand Prix season. They're picking on the particular incident last year where Max Verstappen took out or hit on purpose George Russell, and the stewards were constrained by what kind of penalty they can give. So it does just open it up a little bit more. So if something really extreme happens, they can just disqualify somebody straight away. That all comes down as part of the new driving standards guidelines that have been published. And this is a minefield, right? It says here that they are 50% longer than last year. Policing this is just going to be horrible. And why do you need so many regulations for letting cars race, right? Talking about who needs to be where at the apex. A lot of it is common sense, right? You should always make sure you give some room. I think this is going to cause more problems than it solves, if I'm honest, because over-regulating, you just tend to type yourself into a corner and end up having to give penalties for stuff you shouldn't really be given penalties for. Let's see how it transpires. What do you think? Tell me in the comments below. Do you think we're over-regulating driving? Do you think there's going to be some blows later in the season where there's some wheel-to-wheel racing and it goes wrong and it just ends up being nasty? I do. I think that's what's going to happen. As part of these regulation changes, it does mean that Bottas's grid penalty that he carried over from years ago, 2 years ago was it? And he got the penalty in Abu Dhabi or something like that, and he hasn't yet served it because he hasn't been racing. There was this 5-place grid penalty overhanging, sort of hanging over his head. It's not going to happen, so it's been cancelled. So common sense, really, right? Common sense. Next up is in the regulations. There has also been a quiet drop of the 2 pit stop rule that was put in place for just Monaco. So that has been removed. Let's be honest, it did cause a little bit of a farce with the racing where everyone just backed each other up to allow for pit stops. It was messy, not really acceptable. And you would think with thinner cars this year, there's a chance that it might not be needed. We might get a slightly better race anyway. Nerve damage to Aston Martin, we have talked about those. And then it is practice. So Piastri was fastest in second practice. Behind him was Kimi Antonelli, then George Russell, then Lewis Hamilton, then Charles Leclerc, then Max Verstappen, and then Lando Norris. Lando Norris didn't really get to set many laps in practice 1 because he had a gearbox problem. The McLarens really didn't show themselves in first practice. But I think what we can tell from this is it is very close. Red Bull are right up there, Mercedes are right up there, Ferrari are right up there, and McLaren. I do believe we have a 4-team race. It'll be interesting to see how it goes on qualifying, where who can turn it up a little bit more, but they all look pretty convincing, and it's so exciting because I'm very excited that F1 is back, and we're going to get to see some racing and some qualifying. So let's have a look at the M Sport Extra calendar. Australian Grand Prix, F2 Australian GP as well, and F3 as well. So all 3 are going ahead. I've already shown you the qualifying results for those. IndyCar is at Phoenix, and it's the Supercars, Melbourne Supercars as well, which is fantastic. We do like those. let's have a look at timings, shall we? So first of all, for F1, practice 1 and practice 2 we have seen. Then Saturday, practice 3 is at 1:30 in the morning, qualifying at 5 a.m. and then qualifying 2 and qualifying 3, obviously. On Sunday, the race start is at 4 a.m. So you need to get up really, really early. Or if you want to watch F2 and F3 as well, you need to pull an all-nighter. That's what I'll be doing. If we look at the calendar here for F3 qualifying was at 3 in the morning, 6:30 for F2. We've seen those. Right, so IndyCar. Friday, I'm recording this now. We've missed practice 1. Practice qualifying is at 7. Practice 2, 9:30. Final practice 10. Then football. Other sports. Right. F3 sprint is at 10 past midnight Saturday morning. F2 sprint is at 10 past 3 Saturday morning. IndyCar race 8 p.m. Saturday night. And then the Australian F3 feature race 10:30 p.m. Saturday night. So F3's sprint and feature race are in under 24 hours apart. Okay. Then Sunday, of course, we've got the F1 Grand Prix, but you also have the F2 feature race at midnight. So if you want to watch the F2 feature race, 12:30, and then the F1 race at 4 a.m. as we've already discussed. So much excitement. I'm really, really excited. What do you think the pecking order will be? Who do you think will win the Australian Grand Prix? Pop it in the comments below. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you in the next one once we've seen this first race, and I'm sure we'll have loads and loads more news to digest. I'm here every week. This is my weekend wrap. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.